She's short. She wants to be underestimated, and she doesn't like men in ill-fitting jeans. You know what? I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to go for it. Maybe this is the grenade. Maybe it's not the grenade, but I like her. I want to go with Erica. Oh! Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final Stockwatch of the season. What a smart man, whoever that was in the draft. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me today, she started the season with me on the premiere, and she's here to finish it with me here in the finale. It's Aysha. How you doing, Aysha?
Hey, Taran. If at any point during this you need a refill or some more pizza, please let me know. I'll gladly give it to you. I'll interrupt the podcast. I'll come bring it to you. You'll see all these people shuffling around. So don't worry. You won't have to worry about eating or drinking during this because it's handled.
Perfect. That's always, I think, the sign of a high quality production is when pizza's going around and people are eating it. People are drinking water from wine glasses. It's great.
Yeah, if I hadn't had pizza last night, I would have tried to get pizza tonight and use that as my bit to start off eating pizza, trying to talk. But yeah, Taran, what a pick! You picked her.
Nailed it. First pick.
That's wild. I was thinking like, okay, Taran. He may know something I don't know, but you did it. You knew something we all didn't know. So good job. Congratulations.
She didn't like men with ill-fitting jeans. That was the reason I picked her.
Right. I mean, hey, you gotta pull from what you can, and clearly that will get you $1 million, not liking men with ill-fitting jeans. So
clearly. We are here, of course, to go through the finale of Survivor Season 41, and we will also rate the players based on how well we think they did here at the end. It will be a little bit different than you might normally expect from like a Big Brother rating where they just automatically get ratings. No, we're still going to rate them, but we'll get into that once we get there. What I've been referencing is that my first pick in the draft was Erica. Rob, I did tweet out now, owes me I think a cameo from Erica, so that should be fun. I'll be sure to post it on Twitter or wherever if you want to find it. I did also find I think he owes me something else as well, though. If I win this draft and Rob buys me some chicken nuggets, I'll eat a 6-piece.
Yeah.
6-piece.
Yeah.
Are you
Happy Meal? Yeah, I'm gonna take that Happy Meal.
meal?
I'm gonna be very happy about it. I'm gonna post a picture of me eating a Happy Meal.
That's so weird hearing myself laugh.
I emote a cameo and a Happy Meal.
So with you saying Happy Meal, you would prefer McDonald's?
That's Rob said Happy Meal. I'll be happy with a Happy Meal.
You don't have a preferred nugget of choice?
If I'm being honest, you know what? No, I feel like, didn't they revamp their nuggets a while ago? That must have been years ago at this point, but I feel like the McDonald's nugget is better than it used to be.
I think it has been revamped since the last time I had McDonald's. So I think based
it used
on
to be garbage.
Right? Yeah, there's a large nugget variety. So Rob should just surprise you. I don't know what nuggets are good out there in California. I don't know.
I can't say I've had any chicken nuggets lately. It's been a while since I've had a nugget.
Yeah, you're overdue.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the episode. The nuggets, they're no Xander candy.
This is Xander candy.
It's but it's also no grilled cheese.
Grilled cheese back at camp.
So let's talk about the finale. There's 3 hours to talk about. So instead of doing like a full recap of the 3 hours and that taking, as Derek X would say, 6 hours longer than the actual show, we'll really just go through the highlights here and get to the ratings. But we opened up the episode. Obviously, last round we lost Danny, but Deshawn dropped his truth bomb and Erica still has to deal with that. They're on a new beach, which was weird. I felt like it. I guess it did come up a couple times that they were like in the rain and it sucked.
Yeah.
I guess I'm fine with it. I guess it added something to their camp life experience here in the finale.
Right. I guess it was because, like, with that advantage that we're going to talk about in a little bit, I guess it provided a different environment because if they are just on their beach, like on the merge beach, then they've scoured the place. They know the place really well. And so I guess they were thinking, okay, if we're going to do an advantage, we're going to do this riddle, they need to be unfamiliar with the territory. And so they have a different, that on top of being, having to look for something, they have to look for it in a new place. So, but outside of that, I mean, they could have done it on the same beach.
Yeah. I'm fine with it though. I guess like again, like anything to get them to have to do more things, be
Right.
more, I guess, is fine with me. They have a new advantage they have to find, and despite being the last person to solve the puzzle, the riddle, Erica is able to obtain the advantage. And I think it's difficult to know if this is what got her the win at immunity. Now, I would say like roughly she had like a 30 to 60-second lead based on this advantage. She had like 4 of the rungs on each of her ladders done for her. And it did seem like it could have been kind of close. Like if Ricard had another 30 to 60 seconds, I don't know that he would have beaten her, but I think it probably would have been close. Maybe that's one we have to defer to the contestants. I don't know if they've spoken on this at all, but definitely it's interesting.
I think without a doubt, Ricard would have won that immunity challenge. I mean, he even said it in his exit interview with Rob that he thinks that he would have won it. So for it to be so like, if we think about the puzzle alone, okay, maybe they would have been neck and neck. But if you think about every element, like she was able to bypass a few different areas that probably would have caught her up. And maybe she would have been close. But I think the fact that Ricard came so close while having to do 4 more of the different parts of the challenge, I think shows that like that advantage helped her in a huge way. Like, I mean, it won her the game because she, it had Ricard been sitting next to her, we would have seen a different result. So I think that like in order for Erica to win this season, she had to have gotten that advantage.
Definitely possible. And I mean, for me, this was kind of the desired outcome, right? They're talking about how Ricard needs to win this immunity. If he doesn't, then he's going to be the target. And for me, like I never want to watch someone win out unless their name is Kevin Martin. And so I I want to watch somebody have to do something strategically or socially to get themselves out of a bind. And so I was hoping, that like, hey, if Ricard's going to win this, I do think he's played a really good game. I would be all the more appreciative of his win if he is put in a situation where he has to like really pull a fast one and get himself out of this spot. I felt the same way about like Tony's wins both times. Like I don't want him to just win an immunity and that's why Tony won the game. Like I want them to have to fight for it outside of the challenges, which I don't really care all that much about anyway. I don't mind a challenge win here or there being, clutch or like coming in handy. But especially toward the end, like the last thing I want to see is just somebody who's like, oh well, we just couldn't get him out because he just won.
Yeah, that's true. I feel slightly biased because I was rooting so hard for Ricard, and I feel like he endured enough earlier on in the season for me to be content with him winning out. Like I was like, okay, he's done a lot up to this point. He got Shan out. So I would be perfectly happy if he won every immunity challenge leading to the end. But I think that, you know, I definitely understand that perspective because usually I do have that view. Usually I'm not rooting for someone to just win out. But this has been a very unique season. And so especially with the editing, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
I'm sure we will. So Erica wins and she takes Heather on the reward, and that's because she has to clear the air here with Heather after the truth bomb. She says that Deshawn really he did something here. He
just like pooped all over it.
He pooped all over her game. I don't know if he had too much
grilled cheese back at camp,
or maybe too much.
This is Xander candy.
I don't know.
Or stew. I don't know. You know,
Stew made too much stew.
Yeah, and his bowl was the portion was just too large. You know, in the moment when that Deshawn thing was happening at Tribal, I was like, Deshawn, this is so irrelevant. Like, this is not going to change anything. But the fact that it played out to this point to where now Erica doesn't even want to talk to him. Heather's mad. We think Heather's mad at Erica, which she did confirm in her exit interview that she wasn't mad at Erica. She was mad at Deshawn and how that played out. So I was glad to hear that. She was like, just the way it edited make her look like she was mad at Erica. And so I was like, oh, so this is actually a thing. Now we are at the final four and, you know, we're at the final five and she wants Deshawn out. And so I was like, okay, would that be the case had he not tried to just pull this Hail Mary and just say whatever?
Yeah, and I feel like it's so often the case. I feel like you see this a lot on these shows, Big Brother, Survivor, where somebody will try, they have information that is kind of damning. Erica did say this about Heather, but the way they go about it turns them into the bad guy. And this happens on these shows. I think it also happens in real life all the time, that like you think you have, like, I have it. This is the evidence right here. That means I'm in the right and I can do anything. I can ruin them. And they call them out public. And it's like the way that he went about it just made Heather feel like, screw you. I know what you're trying to do here. You're trying to ruin our relationship. I'm not going to just like do what you want and be mad when that's clearly your objective. You have to have at least some amount of subtlety when you drop information like this, and when you make a public well, Erica is not planning on taking Heather to the end. How about that? It's like screw you, guy.
Yeah, exactly. And then the fact that Heather also said in her exit interview that Deshawn had already told her beforehand. Deshawn told Heather privately that was the case. He already spilled that tea to her privately. So now that you're at Tribal trying to double down and embarrass me in front of everybody to tell me that my number one ally wants me gone, what's the point in that? You're trying to just make sure, you know, you're just trying to, I guess, double down to make sure that Heather votes Danny out. It was just like, it just felt unnecessary. And I think he didn't do himself any favors, but he was just like throwing anything at the wall and seeing what stuck. And I'm like, he should have known when he told her in the first place, okay, that's where it should leave it. Let me try something else. Let me figure something else out. But no, he decided to go all out. And I just think I will talk about that in the ratings, but I think that just shows the type of game he was playing. He was just going to do whatever, whenever. There wasn't kind of like that thought behind it, you know, take a beat, think, consider what you want to do. And this was just evidence of just like, maybe he was just starving. Maybe that was it.
He was starving because
he just like pooped all over it.
Yeah.
Much. So we do get this sort of like the initial dilemma is Erica going to want to vote Deshawn out now instead of Ricard? Is she going to feel so upset with Deshawn that she wants Deshawn out? And she loves Ricard so much. And we have heard in the exit interviews that that the relationship between Erica and Ricard was a lot better than we really were able to see. I actually think we did talk about this at one point on the podcast after the merge. I think that I theorized that it seemed like him and Erica were kind of potentially close based on like different scenes of them in the background. But
Yeah.
at one point, I dropped the theory because I was like, surely they would have told us by now. But apparently, just never until this episode are they going to tell us. But they did have that relationship. They had made that connection. In fact, I think specifically when I was giving Erica a rating at one point, I was like, what is her end game plan? What is her goal here at the merge? Why is she just kind of like glomming on to this big majority alliance? If she has a secret relationship with Ricard and plans to do something later, then that's great. But if not, then I can't rate her high, and we haven't seen any evidence that that's what she's doing. But it really does appear that that is exactly what she was doing. And so retroactively, those ratings should be a lot higher, in my opinion. But they have this close relationship, and so she genuinely does feel like, you know, Ricard deserves to be there more, and Deshawn is such a
He just like pooped all over
I just
it.
love that soundbite. And so we get that, but it's pretty clear to me, and I think it's probably pretty clear to the audience that the way she's describing this is, you know, if I went with my heart, but if I went with my head, and they always whether or not that's actually their head choice is another thing. But whatever you think is the right move in your brain is the move you're going to make like 99% of the time. So it's not looking great for Ricard.
Yeah, I would have definitely loved to see their relationship, like especially with Shan out of the picture. I mean, even with Shan in the picture, they were Ricard and Erica were developing this relationship. It's as if they edited, like Survivor production edited this Erica's perspective as if her winning was a surprise to them. It's like they made it to the finale. It's like, oh shoot, she's winning, so we need to put her in a little bit more. We need to start telling like, oh, Heather was really a part of her game, and like, you know, she really helped her out. But it's like, if that, you knowing Erica wins, it would have been really helpful for us to see the important relationships that got her there. However, we're looking in the background, so.
So she tells Ricard, she's like, I don't know, I'm having, it's a tough choice. It's a tough choice. And this was my biggest moment for Ricard, where I was like, Ricard, really? Because Ricard is in the confessional like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. After what Deshawn did, after he pooped all over it, that she would do this. Like, yeah, of course. She's not playing by emotion.
Right.
But I was like, why are you really surprised by this? But he's then going to go to Xander, and they also had a close relationship that we weren't really privy to until very recently. And as did Erica and Xander, by the way. This whole group, this final four that seemed to pop up directly after the Shan boot, had apparently really had been, you know, in process. Basically since the merge, they've been planning this revolution. And again, it makes so much more sense, and I think puts a lot of the game into a lot more of a better perspective when it comes to what Erica was up to as ultimately the winner. So Ricard talks to Xander about how he actually has another baby on the way. And for as much as I think the players have occasionally sort of like described Xander as insincere, and given his performance at the Final Four Tribal, I understand why they are describing him in that way. I do feel like Xander is such an empath. Like anytime there's somebody else that's sad or sharing sad news, like he's always like right there, like crying with them. And he's just like, oh my God.
Yeah. It's hilarious. Like, well, it's not hilarious. Like, I love that he is such an empath, because I feel like those moments make him seem more genuine. But when Ricard was telling the story, it was I was watching with a group of friends, and we're like, why is Xander crying harder than Ricard? Like, how is this happening? Who's telling the story? Who's missing the birth of their second baby? You know, so it's I think those moments help Xander, you know, seem real, and more genuine. But it's just like from a viewer's perspective, it is kind of funny.
Yes. Then we are going to see Xander in response to this basically he's going to think about it first, and then he's going to tell Ricard, hey, I do have this idol, and I could use it on you, actually. Like, I will use it on you. To the point where we have a scene where Ricard is like, as long as you don't change your mind, and Xander's holding machete like, no, I wouldn't do that. Which, like, if that is about using the idol on Ricard and not like edited completely out of context,
right?
Just extra terrible. But even just mentioning the possibility, I hated as a decision from Xander. Because first of all, using the idol on Ricard would have been a terrible move, right?
Absolutely.
So, but even if he did want to, even if he was going to use the idol on Ricard, zero reason to tell Ricard ahead of time.
Right.
Just play it on Ricard, because the second you tell him that you will or might play it, you have now opened up the possibility of Ricard being like, okay, I can hope that he uses it on me, or I can use this opportunity to flip things around and get everyone to vote Xander because he won't have an idol. Now, given the circumstances, that wasn't going to happen. Nobody's going to put Xander out over Ricard. But there's no reason. It's an opening that doesn't have any business being open, in my opinion. Don't say anything. And then the worst part of it, the final piece of this that I hated the most, is that he doesn't end up doing it. So all he did was just dangle immunity in Ricard's face, like, oh, wait, what if I do this though? No, never mind. No,
right. It's like if a parent leaves home and they tell their kid, hey, I might bring you back some ice cream. So this whole time they're waiting for ice cream. They're excited. They're hopeful. They know it might not happen, but the greater hope is that it will happen. And their parent comes back like, no, I didn't get it for you. Now you're a little bitter. Now you're like, why did you even tell me that? Why was that an option?
I wanted to, I would never have expected you to bring me ice cream. Never in my life have you brought me ice cream, but when you said that you would, I thought it was coming. And now I'm upset.
Exactly. Yes, the fact that it was out there, it even gave me some hope. As someone rooting for Ricard, I was like, let Xander please make a bad move for yourself. Please just do this, act emotionally, ruin your game, sweetie, do it. And then when he did, I was like, dang, it was the right move, but dang. So, yeah.
Dang, 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 I think was exactly what Shan said.
Yeah.
So Ricard is out. I while I was watching this at the tribal, where Ricard then tells the story about his upcoming child to everyone, I was kind of like, oh, I don't love this move from Ricard. But in hindsight, I think he knew that Xander had probably at this point already told him, actually, never mind, I'm not going to use the idol on you. And he knew he was going. Just everything that he talked about, like, I could be one of the greats that didn't win, like all of this stuff. He says he knows he's going. This is his eulogy in the game. And so in that light, I think it makes a lot of sense what he was doing.
It also didn't help that Jeff starts the tribal with, so last tribal, you said Ricard's going. You know, it was Ricard, and now Ricard's here. So now what? Is tonight Ricard? It's like, Jeff, shh, they may have forgotten. Stop. I just thought Jeff was not helping the situation, and I just wanted him to stop talking, just in case Xander was continuing to toy with the idea. So
I like the idea of them coming into tribal and being like, oh my god, you're right, we totally forgot to do that. What were we thinking?
It can happen. You forget things when you're hungry and deprived.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe Ricard's out at camp gaslighting them. Like, man, can you believe how much we talked about getting rid of Deshawn all tribal? They're like, was it Deshawn? Yeah, no, right? We were talking about Deshawn. Jeff was asking about Deshawn. It's like, it's weird. I was like, why is Deshawn such a big threat all of a sudden? It's like, whoa. Then they walk into tribal and Jeff's like, so we were talking about getting rid of Ricard. And everyone's like, oh.
Yes, you got us. Yeah, it was that I was like, Jeff, okay, you're leaving no room for them to change their mind. But then, yeah, it was pretty clear cut with everything they were talking about that it was just like, okay, Ricard's gonna see his way out, because you were just talking about how great he is, how some of the greatest players never win and will never win. So I was like, oh, why would you ever keep somebody in the game who Jeff is willingly saying, bringing up one of the greatest players type of conversation? So they're not dumb.
Yes. Well, Ricard is out, and that brings us to the final four. Again, they're going to have some trouble out on the island, but we're really going to get to the immunity challenge, which is the one I feel like they've done this. Has it been every time since Fire has been? I know they did it for when Ben won. I know they did it at least a few more times.
Yeah, that's
I don't know.
I feel like that's the earliest I remember it. It seems like, yeah. I don't know. Someone in the chat let us know, because
it's a very common Final Four competition at this point.
Absolutely, yeah.
And right away though, I felt like this, definitely is a good spot for Xander with his long limbs. He doesn't have to get as close to the edges of this, crescent shaped.
Yeah. Well, what about the one where they have to time the balls right? Haven't they kind of filtered that one in recently?
That's a pretty common one. I can't remember if
Final
they've
Four
done that recently. Did they do that for?
I remember Jeremy winning.
Yeah, that was before Fire making though.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they're saying
that might be it.
Might have been.
Yeah.
Seasons in a row. Interesting. But Xander's gonna win this one. And this is a big moment. And I thought this was interesting that Xander has this big moment. And I don't think that you would, again, when you're watching Xander, I feel like you're in a public setting, you're usually watching him in a spot where, he's like, I'm going to give up my reward. And or the tribal that we're about to get to. And you don't often get to see these moments where I do think that, more often you or like where Xander, I don't think he comes off as insincere here. I think that he comes off as like, oh my God, like he's a huge moment for him. He talks about how Jeff loved this, that, when Xander's like, oh, well, I wasn't the kid who dreamed I would be here. I was the kid who thought I never would be.
Yeah.
Just, oh, that's
Tell
great.
me more. Tell me more.
And it's a nice moment, but I do think it was interesting because Jeff was like, well, let's just do this here right now. And these are important moments. These are powerful moments, and there's no jury here. And so Xander doesn't get to have this moment in front of the jury. I don't think it would have mattered. But I do think it's interesting especially when we talk about winning the Final Four immunity versus winning the Final Four fire making challenge, and how winning the fire seems to give you a big boost heading into Final Tribal, and winning the Final Four immunity, it not as much of a boost. They don't watch you win,
Right.
and they also watch your emotion when you win, and the things that you talk about when you win. Whereas when Sean ultimately wins fire, he never give up. Oh my God.
Right.
And that's like a heart. It's like that's a passionate moment.
Right.
So interesting thought there.
Yeah, I'd like to see the next person to win the Final Four immunity just be like, Jeff, wait, I'm going to save it for when we're in front of the jury.
Exactly.
Wait for my reaction. I'll do it then.
I'm just going to give I'm just going to be like crying on the inside.
Yeah.
And Jeff's like, how do you feel? Like, fine.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna come into tribal, and Jeff is gonna be like, Taran, it seemed like your reaction was pretty pretty tame when you won this thing. What's going on? Oh, Jeff, it was that process what was happening, but just never give up, just never give up.
Yes. And then the jury's just in awe and they're impressed and they're like, wow, this person's amazing. So
Yeah.
that's the key.
So Xander's gonna talk with the other three in the final four, and he talks to Deshawn, he talks to Heather, he brings Erica in, and so last week on the podcast, I felt like Erica was in a spot where she was definitely going to make the final four. However, I was concerned. I felt like the biggest hurdle in Erica's way in the game was that almost definitely she should be making fire at the final four. And considering that, yes, she did make fire at the Exile-y Island, whatever, she seemed to struggle with it. I felt like she may struggle making fire at 4, and that is her most likely spot to leave the game. And so I was like, here it is. She didn't win immunity. Xander won. He's going to put Erica next to Deshawn. And, Deshawn doesn't seem great at making fire either. But Erica also struggled. And so this could really go either way at this point. And he brings Erica in. He's like, so first of all, I'm bringing you. I'm like,
I was like, what? I was like, did he just tell her he's taking her? Where's the buildup? Where's her convincing him? Where's let me just hear what you have to say. He walked in there, mind made up, walked into that conversation. Look, this is what I'm going to do. I was shocked.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this is huge. This is huge for her game. This was a crux position for her game. And for Xander to make this call and seemingly her to not really have much to do with convincing him to do it, is like you want to have seen her like make this happen as opposed to like
yes
for her.
Yeah.
But I do think that ultimately you can still credit her for this to some degree because she's in the position where he wants this to happen. Now he's going to undersell her to the jury. And so part of that is that he genuinely, I think, underestimates her. But part of it also is that he also sees her as his biggest threat in the final 3. And he doesn't want to give her an edge by allowing her to get a big win by making fire. And so his logic actually does make a little bit of sense, especially if she's great at making fire. Like, why just give her that auto win in front of the jury to prove that she knows what she's doing? And instead just take her along anyway and hope that you can beat her in the final 3. If you can't beat her in the final 3, you're probably gonna lose anyway.
Right.
So the logic makes a little bit of sense. And so I do think that I can I think that we can credit her for, again, just overall the positioning that she's placed herself in regard to the perspective that people have of her and her game, which has done really well for her to this point as well.
Yeah, it's tricky because I definitely get your point about we wanted Erica to be responsible for that, right? Because then that's her move. That's not just Xander making a bad move. But then it's like, I get his logic. Yes, I do get his logic that she's his biggest threat. Doesn't want to help her out any more than she already looks good to the jury. However, if somebody is your biggest threat, you do what you can to get them out, not hold their hand into final 3, not skip to the final 3, to the final tribal and say, okay, now I'm going to explain. Look, we're pretty even, but I didn't let her make that fire and win the fire making challenge to get here. Now we're just even. So, because what's your argument if that was the only thing that was going to give her the edge? I don't know if he thought that far.
I think ultimately you have to be able to frame it correctly. And that's where he really dropped the ball.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like the move itself can make some amount of sense. And I think even the jury ultimately in Final Tribal they were like, oh, that does make some sense.
Yeah.
But um, but in order for it to be a good move, I think you have to be able to frame it properly. You have to frame, and I think that's what he was trying to do. You have to frame it as like, look, Erica and Heather are basically the same. Deshawn is my threat.
Yeah.
And so who even cares? I'll put Heather in because she's better at making fire. And hopefully she will be able to take out Deshawn, or something along those lines, right? Like, you want the perception to be that that Erica's not going in because she's not good at fire, and she's probably not going to claim like, "Oh, I'm actually great at fire" or anything like
Yeah.
that. She's probably going to be like whatever. And so, like that's kind of how you want to frame it, and you want to be able to frame it as something that was, strategic. You can eventually frame it some way else if the jury doesn't agree with your perspective. But what he tries to do is so much worse. We'll get to it soon.
Yeah.
The other thing he considers is that once he sees Erica is actually terrible at making fire, he's like, because he in his head, because Xander, I think you really this whole episode, but in particular this tribal and this decision, I think you can see the youth, right? Like he
Yes.
he thought through this decision and he came up with something that does on paper make some logical sense, and he was super excited about it. Like, this is a little unconventional, but I think it makes sense. And it's fun, but sometimes, Occam's razor, should stay true.
Right.
The simplest path should be the best one. So he's really excited about this. He's really excited about this plan. And then he's presented with something else and he's like, damn.
Yes.
Now there's another option, which is that I could step down and I could take her out. And I was super excited about my other idea. And now I have to and so he considers, should I step down? Should I face Erica myself? Now, I don't think anything's a given in fire making. I don't care how good you are at fire. I don't care how bad you are at fire. I think the Deshawn versus Heather thing kind of was an example of this.
Yeah.
Nothing's a given. Just because Xander's a lot better than Erica at making fire does not mean that he definitely beats Erica at fire. But he probably has a decent edge considering how quick he was to be able to start his fire and how much Erica seemed to be struggling when she was practicing.
Yeah.
So the question, of course, is should Xander have stepped down and taken on Erica at fire? And honestly, I feel like the discussion has become: does the Final Four winner always have to step down? Is that just what is expected
What
of
you
them?
do, yeah.
And I would say no, personally. Just because there have been examples where the Final Four winner should have stepped down does not mean that they always should step down. Like, if Ricard won Final Four immunity, he doesn't need to step down.
Right.
Ricard's anyway. The only time you need to step down is when you are not going to win and you need a Hail Mary. It basically, the winning Final Four immunity gives you a final opportunity at a Hail Mary for winning some jury votes.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what you should be thinking about if you are in the Final Four. You need to be thinking, what is my shot at the jury votes? Because I can essentially put myself in a spot where it's, 50-50 or maybe even like 66-33, something like that, that I can win my way to the final three and make a big play, make something that the jury will be impressed by, and maybe get me some votes. But if you don't need those votes, you absolutely should never do it. And if you don't have a good enough read, if you're unsure about your jury read, you probably don't want to do it anyway.
Right.
Like,
but you have to know that you're unsure. Like, you have to know that you're reading it bad.
Yeah. And for me, part of it too is that it's like, because there are people I'm sure that are saying or going to say that, yeah, he should have stepped down. That would have given him a better chance. Sure. But I feel like we're just looking at that because it was such a tangible choice. It was binary. It was one or the other. But in my eyes, the better way for Xander to have gotten a better chance at winning some jury votes would have been to have a better performance at Final Tribal.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the best way, because he's
Right.
guaranteed. Like, take the guaranteed to be there and then blow your socks off when they question you. You can have the best fire-making performance ever, step down,
Right.
take out the biggest threat, whatever you want. If you bomb the questioning, you still won't win.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to, because I don't want to say, I mean, a lot of people just throw it on the fact that Xander's 20, right? And I don't want to say it like, oh, all 20-year-olds are immature, but the 20s are very formative years, and there are a lot of things you continue to grow through your 20s, as we all know, and emotionally, and even to be able to have a better strategic game. And I think that Xander in a few years could be in a position to do really well. He is a provider, but I think that he would be able to grasp those elements that he wasn't able to this time, that could really help him, because this read he had going into this, thinking that his only option was to take Erica and then just figure it out from there, that was not accurate. He wasn't in a position to understand that I need to throw a Hail Mary. Like you said, the fire for some people can be a Hail Mary, but he didn't even realize he needed to do those things. He needed to put himself in a position that he could gain 1 or 2 more votes. He was just thinking, oh, well, no, I'm pretty sure I can beat Erica. And when they showed that a few times, I was like, oh shoot, that we're about to see him not beat Erica. Because it was like, why would they specifically put that in there? But it was just like, I think it would have been a combination of either taking Heather and then having a spectacular Final Tribal performance, or putting himself into fire, beating Erica, and then also having a fantastic Final Tribal performance. There was in no world was taking Erica and then not being able to defend his game ever going to get him a vote, or get him the $1 million. So I thought it was really, I like, even how Shan said, that's such a bad read. I was like, that's going to be a meme. I knew it, especially with the closed captions. So you're going to see that on Twitter forever.
Yeah, and I mean, so Xander goes to Tribal, and he puts both of his feet in his mouth.
Yes.
He takes other people's feet and puts them in his mouth. Like, it's so bad.
Yes.
I was dying when I was watching this live. It was, so he is going to, and we're going to take this step by step. He starts off by saying, hey, I think that the jury doesn't respect Erica's game. Like, okay, that as a statement, right? First of all, it's wrong. It's wrong right away, makes him look like a dummy. So right away, he's already losing. But let's assume that he was right. Let's assume that the jury didn't respect Erica. They're still not going to probably appreciate him speaking on their behalf. Especially in such a blunt way. Right. Like, when you hold, like, let's say you're like, hey, I think Asia sucks. Asia sucks. And then and I tell Chappelle about it. And then when Chappelle and Asia and I hang out, Chappelle's like, oh yeah, Taran, you think Asia sucks, right? Oh, dude. Well, no, that's not right. I mean, come on. Not like that.
Exactly. It's as if, like, it's like playing a game of Goose Goose Duck, and someone is silenced, and you're just talking about them, and they can't even speak up to, defend themselves. They're like, he's talking in a moment when the jury literally cannot speak. So it's like, that would make me angrier. Just the incorrect statement alone. Okay, that's like, if I'm just talking to you and you say I don't respect Erica's game, yes, I do respect her game, right? The fact that I can't speak, that's going to make me even angrier, and I'm just, like, I'm gonna start fuming. So it's just like, ugh.
But he goes further.
Yes.
right? He goes further because he's like, okay, so if that wasn't incorrect enough, I've got a specific scenario that I can point to. Remember when Deshawn dropped his truth bomb and he went after Erica? That's why I think that you don't respect Erica's game, because you were all on Deshawn's side as he attacked her. And it's like, what? Look, again, even if I did not respect Erica's game, you are now making another claim, which is that I was on Deshawn's side, and now I also have to be. You also have to be correct about that, which you weren't. And I have to now be okay with you saying both of these things, characterizing how I feel. And so, like, and the way that he's characterizing it is so blunt. So, like, he was going after her. You guys were all about it. Like, whoa, dude, no.
It's
and
like,
then,
no. Yeah.
It gets worse.
Yeah.
Because then he gathers up some straw and he just starts building a man. And he says, okay, last one. I know you also all don't respect Heather's game. And like, it's again, like he's okay. Third claim that he's making here. And again, this time, maybe he's right. Maybe this is actually the truth, but again, still doesn't mean that he should be doing it. But in this case, he says, you guys don't respect Heather's game, but you know what? You guys are wrong. He's arguing against the straw man argument that he created. He put that on them and then was like, you guys are so wrong. I understand and respect this woman's game, unlike you all. It's so bad. It's so patronizing. And again, like when people describe Xander as insincere, just watch this tribal and you can understand why I think he comes off that way. And now I don't think that he would like, again, like I think I know where he was coming from and what he was trying to do here. But definitely massive blunders from Xander in this tribal. I literally the second he did this, I was watching on Twitch. I said, "Oh, he just lost the game. Like they're not going to vote for him."
Like nothing more needs to be said at this point because I've seen what I've needed to see, and I'm done. Like at this point, I want to hear from Erica and Deshawn. Like moving forward, when we get to the final tribal, I don't even need to hear from you because what you just said, at that point, how can someone vote for him knowing everything that he just said? Like they can't just push that aside because he came at that argument so strong and so wrong. I died when he was arguing with a claim that he made about with Heather. That was that was hilarious.
Yeah. So and it's a massive favor to Erica as well to be like, you guys clearly don't respect her, because now again, if they don't want to be characterized as the people that don't respect the under the radar female game that Erica is playing, they need to be extra sure that they are going out of their way to be as sort of like generous to her game as possible. So that they don't come off as you guys just didn't respect her game. And so I think he did the complete opposite of what he intended to do there.
Yeah.
In almost every way.
I wonder if he wanted a redo. Like I think because in the excerpt interviews he said he knew when he came in with immunity necklace and looked over at Ricard, he thought he was going to be like, this was for us. And Ricard like looked at him like death stare. He said he knew in that moment, like, uh-oh. But did he know after this performance at the Final Four, like that, I shouldn't have said everything I just said.
Well, that was the thing, that he was like, I was reading the jury when the Deshawn moment happened, and you guys were all on his side.
Yeah.
And their reaction to that was, And I was like, well, hopefully he read that.
Right.
And then he brings it up again. I was like, apparently not.
I mean, he totally misread the Deshawn thing because it was for the jury at that moment. Oh, it's exciting because what's happening here? What's the response going to be? Not yes, Deshawn, I'm with you. Yes. So yeah, he poor Xander. I don't know. It was a tough go.
Yeah. So he is going to ultimately bring Erica along with him. And just like that, Erica is in the final three. And it's going to be Heather versus Deshawn
Yes.
in fire. And I was convinced that Deshawn would win this until it really seemed like he wouldn't. And I was about to be completely mind blown. And then he came back. This was interesting to me. I think it's really, we're talking, it's been what, 7 seasons now, I think,
Mhm.
since I think somebody said that in the chat that they've been doing the fire making challenge for. It's a very regular thing. We talk a lot about like who can make fire well. That seems to be a big criteria. You should be practicing making fire. You should know that you can make fire. It's a huge deal. It's a huge part of the show. It's a huge part of the game. You should know how to make fire. I think that we have been too generous with this
Yeah.
criteria. I think not only should you definitely just straight up know how to make fire, like it's riding a bike, like you're just like ready, like you know it by like the back of your hand. You also should know specifically what kind of fire to make in order to
Yes.
burn a string that goes over a fire. Like, because Heather was way better at making fire.
Mhm.
She made one fire. She built it way better than Deshawn did, who just like piled a bunch of sticks on it. And she had built it correctly. It was flaming. It was a big fire. There were
Yeah.
multiple peaks going up and down, but that was kind of the problem. Because a lot of people have talked about how Heather seemed to be catching a lot more wind.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was the case to a degree, but and again, I'm no fire expert, but I imagine that if a fire with a larger surface area,
Yeah.
like Heather's, that was wider, is going to be more prone to being blown by the wind. And
Mhm.
again, it's like it's got multiple peaks coming up and down, so it's not burning one part of the rope, the string. It's
Yeah.
coming up and it's coming down, it's coming over and it's getting blown. And when Deshawn ultimately makes his little fire thing, it's a very small and concentrated little flame, like it's a small little candle.
Yeah.
And there's a lot less surface area for the wind to catch it. And so it's not being blown as much, and it's very focused on one part of the string, and it's able to just burn right through. And I have to imagine that there is a way to make fire that is more like Deshawn's and less like Heather's, that is going
Right.
to be ultimately more effective at burning the string. And so you should not only know how to make fire, but know how to make fire that will burn a string more effectively.
Right, because getting a spark, I think that was the problem. When they first started doing this fire making challenge 7 seasons ago, that it was like you have to be able to get that spark going, and that was the problem. I can't get it going. And now that we're seeing people getting it going, it's like, okay, who can get that structure the right way faster? And I wonder, are they told not to get up or to leave that side of the table? Because that was Heather's problem, was the wind coming in front of her. Can she get up, block it with her body? Because I'm like, okay, she doesn't have any materials to block it. Can she get up and block it so that it can stop blowing towards her?
I don't know. It's I don't know what the rules are, but yeah, definitely, I think you should essentially just you should practice this specific thing.
Yeah.
You should put a string, tie it above a fireplace or whatever, and just
Hmm.
practice making fire. time yourself. What methods are the fastest? This could and has been literally a $1 million challenge
Yes.
multiple times. So just like there's no excuse for not being an absolute expert at this. And you can hide it or you can show it, whatever is best strategically. But if you are in a spot where you have to do it, you should know exactly how to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I was watching this challenge and literally wrote in my notes, Heather won this. And I was ready to move on. Right. I thought that was the end of it. I was just like, whoa, what's happening? And so it was literally the second time Deshawn was so close to just going home. Like the do or die. Like he's just been on the cusp all season of just going home after, their is it Luvu? So so I thought that was funny, but I do have to applaud Deshawn for not giving up because if I looked over and saw Heather's fire, I would have thought it was a wrap for me, but he kept going and it paid off.
Yeah, and I was even when I was watching, I was like, man, I feel so bad for Deshawn. Like this must be so disheartening to just know that you lost in this moment. And that's why, like afterwards, when he wins, it is such a genuine moment. Never give up because oh man, like what a great moment there. For as much as I don't like what the fire making sort of has done to the overall strategic structure of the show, I do think it unfortunately does often make for great TV. Like I feel like more often than not, there have been great moments from, Chris versus Devins, Tony versus Sarah. This one, like it really, it is pretty good.
Yeah, it's like as critical as like this community is on this fire making challenge. Even Rob tweeted last night that like it's been pretty exciting. So it's like, okay, are we gonna say it's good? Or are we gonna say I feel like people continue to want it gone, but it has been delivering on the entertainment factor. I think the sucky part is when someone loses that we thought had a great chance had it not been for the fire making challenge. But like, hey, if that's a part of the game at this point, then maybe that's just how you need to adapt. I think that's one of the things I love so much about the season was that you could know everything there was to know about Survivor for the past 40 seasons, but coming into this, you had to adapt. The foundation was there, but you never knew what to expect. So I like that there were these different elements. But with that being, that's a part of the structure, that's something you have to prepare for. So I don't know. I'm not so hard on it like a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, Heather is out, and our final three is Deshawn, Erica, and Xander. And we're gonna get to final tribal. Here we go. I liked this final tribal. I felt like it was especially obviously in comparison to Big Brother, which is so our question is what is your favorite food? Yeah, it's much better. I loved Nasir, especially again, like this whole insincere thing with Xander, which is the reason I'm bringing this up. It was often how he's described in the exit interviews that we've gotten across the season. And probably one of the bigger reasons why, it seems as though lots of the people in the casual audience who have been watching the edit, which has been interesting, have been like, what? How did he lose? Do you see what he looks like? And I think the insincere thing is an important piece to point out because even though I don't necessarily think that it's true of Xander, he does seem like, again, a very sincere person to me. I think that he came off as very insincere for a lot of the reasons that we've already talked about. And it was nice. I mean, Nasir is just a gem of a human being, and he does not seem to think that Xander was insincere despite not voting for him. And he was like, "Oh, you have a good heart, Xander." It was nice, being out here on this island with you. That was fun.
Yeah, it was so refreshing seeing Nasir again. my number one pick in the draft. I think it's because he can relate to Xander with they were similar in a lot of ways of wanting to provide for the tribe, being empathetic with people, and so when I was trying to figure out who was going to vote for who at this point, because I felt like coming into this final tribal, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure how the jury were going to vote. I didn't know, at this point we hadn't seen how well everybody was going to do in tribal and in final tribal. And so walking into this, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to suss out who's voting for who. And I for sure thought Nasir was going to vote for Xander based on just that little bit we got from Nasir.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say I was completely fooled by the edit. I know a lot of people. I think the Erica stuff started around the time Shan was voted out. So like a few episodes ago, the people started saying like, "Oh, we think that Erica might be the Edgic winner." But like, prior to that, they were like all in on Tiffany, and so like I was like, "These people don't know what they thought." Tiffany, and now they're on to Erica. What are they talking about?
Yes.
Erica was completely invisible in the pre-merge. She had one episode, and it showed her ultimately like almost getting voted out because her tribe wanted to throw the challenge to get her out. Like, is that the winner? Yes, apparently it is.
Yes.
This is, and it's funny too because it's compared a lot to the Michelle Fitzgerald situation. And I was on the other side of that one. I was like, no, Michelle's the winner, and people are like, what? And now I'm like, okay, I was the one tricked this time. But so a lot of people saw that coming, but I really felt like Deshawn had so much screen time. I really felt like it was going to be Deshawn. But game wise, I did feel like Erica should have the best chance until Ricard starts talking and he says like, "Hey, Erica, I know." Essentially, he says, "I know you're great, but these people don't believe me. They don't see it. Can you explain yourself?" And so to me, that was like, oh no, like she's got Ricard, which is great.
Right.
I thought she would, but if Ricard is failing at convincing the others, this could be a bad sign. And so that completely threw me. But I thought her answer to this was so good because he asks her about. Danny had a great question, which is like, put your game in quarters of,
Yeah.
and so they all talked through. I thought they all did a pretty good job overall with this. But Erica's was very good. And she talked about building relationships. And so Ricard asks her about, he says, look, a lot of the people on this jury, they didn't really have much of a relationship with you. So when you talk about relationships, like what does that mean for you as a player? And she gives a fantastic answer because this is something that like I have been saying for years, which is that like, be like what a social game looks like in a game like this does not have to be the cookie cutter, like, I'm an extrovert. I can walk into a party and be like, hey, what's up, hey, buddy? Everybody knows me. Everybody loves me. I've got relationships with every single person. I'm the cool cat. It's like that can work for you, but there are so many introverts. There are so many people that win Survivor that are not that person, that are not like the social god. And like, how do you explain that, right? And it's that is not necessarily the best way to play. It's something that we idolize in our society a lot, but most people aren't like that. And being able to form strong bonds with individuals and knowing those limitations, so to speak, and working within them and working what strategically, having your social game work in coordinating with your strategic game, as opposed to just being like, I'm friends with everybody and I have a separate strategy over here, is so important. And the way that she's able to describe that, like, I know who I am. I built relationships that were the important relationships to get me to where I am. And that's what matters. That's what's important. Deshawn, yeah, he's better at being friends with everybody.
Right.
Sure, that was good for him at times. Sure, you probably have more of you probably have more of a relationship with him overall, but does that mean that he's better socially than me? Like, what does
Right.
that even mean? If we've gotten here and more of you probably feel negatively toward him than toward me, and probably more positively toward me than toward him.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was such a great answer. And it's not too often that I feel like I hear somebody describe something that I'm genuinely like, oh yes, that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's great for you and also the truth.
Yeah, exactly. I think what a lot of people forget is like Erica's 32. Like this, she may be, shorter and, quieter on first glance, but like she said, she knows who she is. And I feel like coming into the final tribal, a lot of people, including myself, underestimated her ability. I think she knew if I can just get to final tribal, I will be able to articulate how I got here. Like whether, people are completely aware of it or they have no idea how I got here, I will be able to articulate it. And I loved her responses specifically to this question. I mean, but to every question, because it's like, yeah, everybody doesn't have to be the biggest social butterfly in the world. And she said like she thrives in these one-on-one connections. And it's like, yes, Erica, I love that you know who you are and you use that to your advantage rather than trying to look around you and say, like, well, Xander's doing this and Deshawn is doing this, so I'm going to try to do this. I think that really helped her, and that's how she got to where she was because she just stayed true to who she was. So that's one of the things I really liked about her this season.
Yeah, and this isn't like maybe some people won't love this comparison, but it reminded me a lot of the reaction to Big Brother 18.
Mm-hmm.
And when Nicole won, and a lot of people said, like, hey, what? How did she win? This is nonsense. She didn't have, like, she stayed in bed all season. She didn't talk to people. She didn't have these relationships. And my response at the time was like, you don't need to. Like, in fact,
Right.
in some ways, by not having that relationship, she benefited because people were able to see her she was able to put them in a position where they were able to give her the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't close enough to feel burned by her. They weren't close enough to see all of the mistakes, all of the flaws that she had in her game.
Yep.
And instead, she was able to focus on the people that she was close to, people that she could trust, and then those people were able to portray her game in an even better light than maybe she could have had. And it seems like potentially that's part of what happened here with Ricard as well, where Ricard is able to really help sell her to the rest of
Yeah.
the jury. And people who she didn't really have relationships with, the people that she did have relationships with, felt so good about her that they wanted to sell her and be like, no, you don't know, but we know, and
Right.
trust me, she's great. And that's a great place to be,
Yeah.
especially when you're able to go to the end with other people that people are not super high on.
Right.
So I loved that answer. I loved Erica's performance overall here in the final tribal, and I love the final tribal format. I think it's very fun.
I do too. I just love the discussion. I love that if someone has a thought, they can speak up and express it. And I feel like we just really get a good feel of everyone's stance. And like Deshawn said, he knew going into that final tribal, once people started talking, that he had no chance. Like he knew based on who they were rooting for or who what their perspective was at that point. And I think it's really helpful because that also helps the people that are still in the game shape their answers. They're not just gonna, well, you would hope they wouldn't just continue this narrative of, oh, I did this, this, and this, if the jury does not have that perception of them. And so I think that, if Xander had been, I don't know. I think if Xander could read the situation and adapt from there, that could have helped him a little bit, maybe get a vote or two, could help shape someone's opinion. But I was also surprised that Deshawn didn't kind of adapt and rather just, well, that's what they think about me. So, I mean, dang, sucks that I just lost this. I didn't expect him not to not to use that information through the questioning from the jury and try to sell himself a bit more. I feel like Erica was the only one that just like, yes, she had people campaigning for her, people that were on her side, but she did an excellent job articulating what she did.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I feel like Xander and Deshawn, I think they're both capable players. Like, I think Xander is a very naturally gifted player in the sense that he's obviously very athletic. He can do well in competitions. He's good at finding advantages and things. And I do think that he has a good strategic mind for the game. I think that like a lot of his ideas were interesting, and in the way that he was able to play certain situations were good. I feel like his natural instincts are good for the game. It's when he tries to do something on top of that where he starts
Yeah.
to fall short, right?
Mhm.
Like when he starts to get too cute with things, like those, like I feel like his idea of what it means to be playing a good game interfere with the game that he could be playing if he just kept it simple, and was just a little more chill. And I feel again like that's so key to how Erica won, right? Because
Yeah.
she knows who she is, so confidently knows who she is, and doesn't try to be anybody or anything else. And that's where you often fall short in these kinds of games. Deshawn, on the other hand, I feel like has so much potential socially, and strategically. I feel like he was also somebody who could have been very good if not for a couple of key flaws. One primarily being that he wasn't able to sort of like contain his emotions.
Yeah.
And Shan calls them temper
Temper
tantrums.
yeah, temper tantrums.
But that's really like what seems to have cost him. And I think that like again, in smaller doses, these emotions and these temper tantrums and stuff, they're good for him. One of the things he talked about in his exit interviews is that when he was getting the tribe to throw the challenge to take out Erica, he had actually convinced Erica that it was to take out Sydney. And part of him did want to take out Sydney at some point, primarily because he wanted to make sure that that Danny didn't have any other options, which
Right.
ultimately is, part of why Danny ends up voted out at the final 6 and not Deshawn, because Deshawn's people are there and Sydney is not, who was Danny's person, wasn't really explained to us in the show, but
Right.
but that seems to have been the case. And ultimately why, Deshawn is sitting there with now 100K and Danny's sitting there with whatever he gets it for 6th.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, that was really selfish of me. I was jealous of their relationship and I wanted to like make sure that he had no other options, stuff like that." But like, again, in small doses, that's a good thing.
Right.
But when it's dragged out and exposed into the light and he gets defensive and it starts kind of, you know,
Yeah.
combining on top of itself and layering,
Right.
he started to like get in a position where he wasn't able to stay in control of the different sort of emotional forces that were pulling at him. And I don't think that it helped that that he eventually gets into this alliance, the with the other black players in the game, and all of the tension that happened there. I think that's when like the balance really shifted, right? Like he dealing with that stress and like, what do I do with Shan and what do I do with all this stuff? I don't think he ever really recovered from that and gained his footing back. But I do think that that he has the potential to be a more effective player. Because I think that he was very good, especially in the pre-merge. And I did like a lot of his ideas, but man, by the end of the season, he's dropping truth bombs.
Yeah.
And in Final Tribal, when Shan initially starts talking about, and again, maybe again, she really questions him. She's like,
Right.
were you using the community to play me? And because she asked about temper tantrums and that, and it was like, it would have been easy, I think. I think there's an easy response to temper tantrums for Deshawn, which is like, yes, like I'm imperfect, and I know that my emotions got the best of me, and I was throwing temper tantrums, and like I definitely apologize for that. Like it's something that I surely need to work on. I've now found this out about myself,
Yeah.
but I cared so much. This game makes you so paranoid, and I really, I don't know what took over me, but I felt like I was doing what I had to do in the moments. Yeah, I feel like you need to take ownership of your
Right.
behavior. But I think he was also very concerned about like, whoa, no.
Yeah.
I did not use the opportunity. Like, screw everything else.
Right. He couldn't
That's
even
not what
address it.
happens.
Yeah, that's so tough too, because that's why what the cookout did on Big Brother was so phenomenal, because they there you have this struggle. Like, Deshawn saw Shan as a threat, so he felt like, okay, yeah, we have this, but I also need to look out for my game and get her out. And so, he had that struggle and didn't know what to do. It ultimately choosing his game, but then he also could have acknowledged what Shan pointed out. She said she would have gone fourth. She was so committed to the cause that even though that was not in her best interest, even though she very well could have won the game, she's just like, that was more important to her at that time to establish that there would be a Black winner and make it that far. But Deshawn and her never connected deep enough for him to see that that was her motivation, to see that that's what she would want to do. He's thinking, no, I'm a gamer, she's a gamer, she's going to want to get me out first chance he gets. And there was just all that in miscommunication. And so I think that's so tough I think it would have been in Deshawn's best interest to not, if he knew that that's what he wanted to do, game first and foremost, then they shouldn't have established that alliance, the Black alliance, because then feelings start getting hurt, because then it's deeper, it's more personal. It's not, oh, you just see me as a threat, you want to get me out. Then it's like, no, we connected on a deeper level, or we established this connection, and we established that we wanted to do this for the cause, and then you got me out. You ruined that by going along with this plan. You didn't tell me, and so I ended up going out first, and then we went out back to back to back, and you're the last one standing, so why should I reward you when like, this would be a totally different situation. They made it to Final Four and Deshawn was there pleading his case, and it's like Shan would be his biggest cheerleader because they stuck to what they were going to do. So I was like, I can understand how Shan was feeling in that moment, and even by the reactions on Liana's face, I could tell she felt the same way. So it's tough for Deshawn. I think that it would have just been in his best interest not to take it there, because all it caused was some hurt feelings.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately, again, I feel like this is a very common sort of mistake, I guess, failing that people have, defensiveness, right?
Yes.
And I feel like that's what cost Deshawn a lot in the game, and I feel like it cost him a lot in Final Tribal, when it came to temper tantrums.
Mm-hmm.
He did say, like, yeah, I got a little emotional sometimes. He kind of like,
no,
tried to brush over the like taking taking responsibility for it, and Shan was having none of it, like, temper tantrums, like,
right.
maybe there were temper tantrums.
Yeah.
Like, he really didn't want to give up that defense. And
Mhm.
then we also in another situation where Ricard was talking about, like, hey, what about all these things that you said at the merge about,
Right.
like, wanting to weaken Danny and wanting to get out this person, wanting to get out that person. And I just felt like, again, it was like there was such an easy answer to this, which is just like, yeah, that I was playing the game. I was
Right.
doing what I had to do.
Yeah.
Like I don't hold anything against any of these people.
Right.
I had to win you to my side. I had to do whatever. But instead, he's like, well, all of that is true, exactly. And it's like, it doesn't, like, even if he didn't say a single word of that, like, unless you have, like, irrefutable evidence that you didn't say a single word of that, you can't deny that you said a single word of that, because any defensiveness will just always look bad.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
have, like, and that's why, like, the irrefutable evidence thing is what I said, because it can't be a defense. It has to be an attack. It has to be, no, you are wrong, and let me show the entire world how wrong you are.
Mhm.
And never be, I'm innocent.
Yeah,
I
I kept the
swear.
peace. I kept the peace. I was the person on the tribe that made everybody get along. What was that narrative? Why was that his story? Why was that something that he would think, okay, if I say this, I was, I kept the peace that they're going to want to reward me $1 million.
Yeah.
I was just very confused.
So I feel like there was some screw ups there as well.
Yes.
But Erica does very well. We get to the vote, and Jeff says, "We're gonna read them right now."
Yeah.
And he does. And I feel like it didn't feel like this was super dramatic, but I feel like that was also just because like it was a blowout.
Yeah.
Like Erica gets 1 vote, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
I've definitely won the draft. Like I've gotta have at least 2nd place after Deshawn, and that means I've won. Here we go. Deshawn gets another vote, and I'm like, that's it. I'm locked in. I've won. Then it's Erica again, and I'm like, is she
right.
Erica again. I'm like, oh my god, she won. And then it's like Erica. So I mean, this is great. I think I do prefer this way. I think I do like it when they read the vote right away.
Yeah.
I feel like too often in the live show, we do get great moments. We do get great reactions. I think about like Tyson in Blood versus Water. Like you do get great reactions from the winner usually. But at the same time, like a lot of the time, the winner either already knows, like they have a pretty good idea. And also like the losers also pretty much know
They
by
know.
then.
Yeah.
And they're all just like, oh, yeah, congratulations. And like I liked it a bit more raw here, where like they recently just discovered that the jury doesn't seem to be super kind to them in the questioning, and it's like they're hopeful still, and it's like oh no. So I like this, and Erica is our winner.
Yeah, 7-1, a 7-1
7-1.
queen. I was very proud of her. I know that they had the thing of like, okay, there hasn't been a female winner. There has not been there. Very rarely do women beat men out. When it comes down to it, and so it's been. It was so. I was so glad to see her win. The moment Ricard was voted out, I said, okay, I'm all in on Erica. Let's see it. Let's see it happen. So I was so proud of her, being, Filipino immigrant from Canada. It's just, she is the first Canadian to win.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just like, it's incredible. I think she came there. She knew her role. She didn't try to be anybody she wasn't. And I was just so happy for her. And so she's our winner.
She's our winner. They do the reunion show, the after show live as well. And at first I was like, this is lame. This is not working for me. But that was only because Jeff was asking the lamest questions. He was just like, hey guys, remember when Nasir said this?
Hi, Jeff. I am as confused as a goat on AstroTurf.
Oh! Hey guys, remember the grilled cheese?
Grilled cheese back at camp.
Hey, remember this, whatever this is?
I'm like cool like cucumber no matter what situation is happening.
Oh, that was a good one. And it was just like, this is so lame. And the thing too is that like none of them have watched the show yet. So in their minds, they're telling a story about what happened to them. They don't know that we already know it because we already saw it. So like usually when it's months after the fact, they've seen the episodes. They know what they don't need to recap for us. But instead it's like Shan's like telling a story about like, well, one of my allies who thought they were my number one, because they don't even know who this is. Well, one of my allies who thought they were my number one, but they really weren't. They told me about the idol, and so then I went when Jeannie found the idol, I told her not to take it, and then I took the idol. It's like, yeah, we saw this entire thing play out in more detail.
Right? That was the flaw in this. I liked them doing immediately after, because I like that they can't form their opinions and their thoughts based on the edit. But that's the problem. You have them repeating stuff or trying to fill gaps that they think we don't know, but we do know. And then the whole pizza drinking element, that could have been, the only people who really needed to be eating and drinking were the final three. Everyone else is fully fed. They didn't need that, we're going to talk for 30 minutes. So you have to eat. You have to drink and eat right now. But I did like them doing immediately after. I think there are some things that they can clean up, which they know now. They know now what they can fix. But I don't think it's something that they should just completely scrap. I think it works. I'm glad that they immediately found out the winner. You saw that raw reaction. But then now you have Erica trying to react to her winning $1 million while trying to eat pizza and drink, and then hearing all this conversation. It's a lot to process at that moment. So maybe they can figure out a better timing situation. Maybe, hey, now we reconvene in a different part of Fiji or on a different part of it doesn't have to be, it can be maybe at tribal council. It doesn't have to be immediately
Just don't
after.
give them pizza.
Yeah.
Do it immediately after. Just be like, you'll get pizza after we wrap this up.
Right.
If you do a good job, we'll give you pizza.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was turned around though by the end, because I do think we got a lot of good stuff in like the second this that we couldn't have gotten after the fact, which is hearing from Liana about different positions that she found herself in, and being proud of herself for her reaction to things. Hearing from Nasir about his experience. Hearing from Danny, who talked about like his father and everything there. And yeah, we had seen that in the episode, but being able to see him tell them and their reaction to it. And Ricard too, who's like, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, like it sucks right now. I'm still feeling the loss. Like it only happened a couple days ago. Like that stuff was great when Jeff just kind of let them talk. Like that was all good. And more of that, less of the other stuff. And I'm definitely all in. The thing I'm really missing is like the biggest thing just happened. They just voted for a winner. And we're not taught. We didn't mention it like once,
right?
Ignoring the fact that 8 people just voted for 3 other people.
Yes,
and 2 of those people are sitting there like, "Why did I just lose?"
Right?
Probably thinking like, "Why did I win?" And no questions. Like, why aren't we not asking like, "Hey, what was the like?" Now that we don't have to hide it, what was the thought process? Why did you vote? Who voted for Deshawn? Danny? Why did you vote for Deshawn? Like,
do you think it was Danny?
Yeah, I think people have looked at the handwriting of the vote, sort of like determined that it must have been Danny. So like, I feel like you like those are like, that's why are you not asking these questions?
Yeah,
like that's what I want to know. Like that's what and I'm sure it's what they want to know. Like I'm sure that after they stopped filming this, that's like probably the first thing that they would want to ask if they had the nerve to. Deshawn would go up and be like, "Yo, why did you vote for me?"
Right.
Or like Erica going up to, I don't know, like somebody she didn't have, like maybe Erica going up to Shannon being like, "Hey, you voted for me. Like, thank you so much. Like, why did you choose me?" Like I feel like there's so much that's there that's so relevant to what we just saw. It's completely ignored.
I think Jeff is so used to unpacking the season and these like after the finale situations that he kind of didn't take it from our perspective of we just saw and their perspective. We just saw the winner play out. They just found out the winner. So this is different. Everything needs to be a little bit different because of the timing. They haven't had time to sit on it. They haven't had time to process these emotions. And so I think that's why he just jumped into it. Like, oh, the AstroTurf, and let's talk about this, and let's talk about this, rather than you just won. Yes, like you said, why did you vote for Erica, and why did you vote for Erica? Not the initial question. I think it was just a matter of a time crunch. So we need to talk about the whole season, when really the motive for the votes was the most important part.
It's also like we've never had an opportunity like this. Genuinely, it happens a little bit with Big Brother, but even by the time you're able to ask these questions on Big Brother, they've been out of the house for like at least a day. They've been able to see some kind of fan reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to ask questions right then and there, like, "Hey, if Xander had stepped down and made fire against Erica, and it was Xander,
Right.
Heather, and Deshawn, would he have won? What do you guys think? Who would have voted for him? Who might have voted for him?"
Mm-hmm.
And then we would know.
Right.
Or like, all kinds of stuff like that. There's so much information that you can find out that's super interesting. And just
Yeah.
left on the table.
Yes.
Like uneaten pizza.
Right. That's what, you know what? It probably was the first question. What made you guys vote for Erica as the winner? But Jeff was like, okay, what actually, do you guys want pizza? Do you need a refill? And then just completely disregarded, forgot that was the first thing you need to ask. But Adam made a good point in the chat that he did not mention the shot in the dark at all. So is that a failed twist?
I don't think so. I mean, I've said this before, but I feel like the existence of it, whether or not it's used, does a lot for the game because it requires a lot more subtlety in your decision making. You have to hide the fact that the person is going to be voted out. Otherwise, they'll know that they have to take the shot in the dark. So you have to really trick them extra.
Mhm.
I think that again, even if it doesn't end up used or doesn't end up being used successfully, I feel like it adds so much because it also adds an extra layer of analysis that you can do to each
Yeah.
episode. Like, should they have played the extra vote, or should they have played the shot in the dark? And it's another piece for the players to think through. Like, should I give up my vote right now to try this,
Mhm.
or is it better for me to take the shot here? So I liked it.
Yeah, I was a fan. I liked it. And I hope they keep doing it. And I hope that they improve it and don't do it the exact same way. Because I think it can be great if the right questions are asked, the time is spent on the right things. I think it could be a solid after show.
Yes. So season 41, drop the 4, keep the 1. Jeff, he's
I'm so happy I'm here.
he was so happy to be there. Still my favorite clip, probably.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there was one thing when Evie spoke, and they talked about we had the younger people and we had the older people,
Yeah.
and like if I was in my 20s or if I was 20 or if I was in my later days, that was hilarious.
Man. I saw it coming too.
Yeah.
Where like as soon as they said 20s, I was like,
Oh,
you better know. You better know what you're gonna say.
Right. Later days. So
Later days. What do you
yeah.
think?
Right.
So it's season 41, drop the 4, keep the 1. This is the edit we got for Erica and her win. Now, it is kind of an unusual edit for the winner. Not super unusual for a woman of color.
Right.
But even then, it was still kind of different. Like, at least in my eyes, like you take for instance the Michelle win, which is sort of like the most comparable one right now. And to my memory, people were pretty sure that like the Edgic people were pretty sure that Michelle was going to win from very early on. Like even the pre-merge, like Michelle. This one, it really wasn't until the last couple of episodes that people really started jumping on the Erica train. So I do think that there's still some sense of like uniqueness going on with this particular edit. Under-edited, I think, in a different way. So I think the question is this just the latest in a long trend of under-editing women and people of color? Or is this going to be the new normal for winners moving forward? Are we going to be hiding them more often? I think probably the answer is the one we don't like as much, but I do think at least some possibility that that this might be a new trend. What do you think?
Yeah, because a part of me was thinking, okay, are they doing this because this is, like you said, this is season 41. We're trying new things. We've always there has always, or most times, people are able to read into the edit, right? And so they're like, let's change it up. Maybe we want to keep people guessing. They can't read the edit, and there never will be ever will be able to guess that Erica won, right? Or are they just continuing what they have always done and under edited women of color, which is the case? There have been a lot of good statistics that have been tweeted out. They'll show you who won the season and where people rank women of color, and it shows people of color and where they rank on that, on if they were over edited or under edited. And we're just like people of color, just, stacking the lower half of that list. And it's like, okay, it begs the question, do they just not know how to edit, women of color? Or do they just not know how to edit when there's some intersectionality? You have Erica, who is a woman, but she's also a Filipino woman, so is it just like, okay, we don't really know what the edit should be for this type of person because we've never been able to master it? Is it just that they need more people of color in production in order to make this happen? The CBS initiative of casting people that are, 50% Black, Indigenous people of color, that needs to be a standard across production, because until that's the case, we're going to continue to see this. We're going to continue to see, out of nowhere, here comes Erica. And it's just that, they just haven't been able to master it in the past, and they won't be able to master it in the future unless people come in to educate them on how to get something done in that way. So I don't know. Like you said, yes, it's the answer that we don't like. And I think that, the start is with casting, and I think it just needs to filter into production for us to be able to start seeing some real change.
Yeah, because I think that you could look at it and say maybe they are bad at editing certain game styles,
Yeah.
and maybe like women more likely to play a certain way. I think you could say that, but you look at the list. To me, it's there's like some egregious counterexamples to that. For instance, Tommy, number 14 out of 41.
Yeah.
In terms of visibility.
Right.
Tommy.
What? Yeah, exactly.
I have nothing against Tommy.
Yeah.
But like he was absolutely like the zero advantage, no challenges, like
exactly
just social, under the radar kind of win. But Tommy is way up on the list.
Yeah.
And Erica and Michelle and even Parvati, Sandra are all way down at the bottom of the list. Parvati and Sandra way down at the bottom of these lists.
Right. Mind-blowing.
The franchise.
Yeah. It's literally the first 7 of just top edits. All men, white men. And then if you go down to the top 17, it's one person of color, Earl Cole. And that you have to go all the way back to season 14 for that. So it's, I mean, it's clearly.
And 2 women of 17.
Oh, yeah. 2 women. Kim Spradlin, of course, and then Sarah Lucina. So it's tough. Because there is not a coincidence. It's what, people are going to continue to do things that are familiar to them and what's comfortable to them. And so I think, it's like, what do they need to do to change this? I guess they have to see that there needs to be a change, because I bet you Jeff's very happy. Like, we've had our first woman winner in a while. Like, we're good. We're like, but we didn't see her for most of the show. And
so here's the thing. Like, for me, like the way that, like, I'd be fine if this was just the new trend and just
Mhm.
all winners were hard to see, because I enjoy not having a pretty good idea of who's going to win.
Yeah.
So like I'd be okay with that. I do think that like kind of sucks for the winner, like have a long history of being like crowned by the edit, to all of a sudden like now you're not really crowned by the edit. But like, as a viewer, I feel like that's in my opinion a better experience. I feel like some people may disagree. I feel like some people want to feel like the winner got crowned. They want to like be more invested. They want to feel like they know exactly why the winner won. But in my like, I think so. Okay, for me, the reason why I'd prefer them to go like total surprise is because when they do a crown edit, they still try to act like they're surprising me. Like they don't go all the way. Like what my ultimate preference would be, don't bother to misdirect me at all. Just show me exactly, just give me the Big Brother live feeds with Survivor.
Right.
Give me everything. Let me know from week 3 that, Cody Calafieri is going to win the game. I'm fine with that as long as I get to actually see what's happening. But when I know a person is going to win and you spend most of your episode pretending I don't know, that's when there's a huge disconnect and it's bad. But of course, the other way to do this is to start over-representing everybody gets equal representation as a winner. And so I feel like you've got to do at least one of those two things.
Yeah, I feel like there has to be a balance. Like at least, okay, who the top 8 are. So let's put, let's over edit those 8, or there is a way without over editing just the winner to make it so obvious that this person is going to win. Because I mean, we can be honest that Xander was over edited this season. We saw so much of Xander that I thought Xander was going to win. Like I was like, okay, leading up to now, yes, it showed Deshawn's facing adversity through his alliances and just, getting caught up and in the do or die. But then like if we're going based off of the edit, Xander is probably gonna pull this out. And then for him to be a 0 vote finalist and have gotten as much screen time as he did, it's just like, where was that? Because he had an idol and an advantage that he didn't use until later. Like what was the point?
Yeah. Well, that's what we have. Let's rate the players. Let's rate them. Our final 5 players. So how this is going to work, we're going to rate them from 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. But this is a little different because 5 of these players lost, and 1 of them won. So for me, how I kind of approached this was kind of similar to what I do before, but it's going to be kind of a combination of them as a player overall with their performance in this particular episode, the finale. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it to see what we rate these players. Let's pull up the visual. I mean, hopefully at this point you don't need the visual.
You're like, who's that?
Okay, but we're gonna start with Ricard, who of course went out in 5th place. And so here's what I want to talk about with Ricard. In this episode, he lost the immunity challenge, and he seemed surprised when Erica was like not on board to keep him. Did seem like he made an effort to potentially get Xander on board to use the idol on him. I don't know how close that actually came to working, but I do think that like very valiant attempt there. Overall, I think he's a really interesting person to look at with his game because he comes into the game very much not the Shan, not the person that connects immediately with everyone. He leaves the game with a bunch of really great connections who didn't want him to go. I think that's such an interesting shift. And I think strategically, he worked very well. He connected with Shen. That was the important relationship. They dominated their tribe. They came into the merge with 2 people. They got into a majority alliance. He worked a secret sort of side alliance, ready to overthrow the majority alliance. The big move to take out Shan, talked about it at the time. Was it the right timing? And was it the right person?
Right.
And especially given the results, I think the timing was actually right. I do think the timing was right. But I do still feel, and I felt this way at the time, that I'm not sure that Shan was the right person to take this shot at, especially considering, because I thought maybe the excuse is he couldn't have grouped these people together unless Shan was the target, because they all wanted Shan and they wouldn't have accepted anything else.
Yeah.
But that doesn't seem to have been the case. It seems like they were all ready to make this move regardless. And I feel like if he takes out Danny or Deshawn, and leaves Shan in the game as his shield, that he needed to play shield, because as soon as he took out Shan, he was so vulnerable.
Yeah.
And they very quickly, they waited one more tribal and then they went right at him, and he needed to win 3 straight times in a row at 6, 5, and 4 in order to survive to the end. And it's just one too many in my eyes. I think like you can say maybe maybe 2, but 3 in a row with no idol, I think is a tough road. And if he had Shan in the game, maybe they just vote Shan out at 6 or at 6, or sorry, at 7, and then he still has 3 to go. But she had that idol, so probably not. They probably wouldn't have been able to. And he also still had that connection to Shan that he might have been able to use. And I feel like, again, like this is such a Tony move, right? Like to really upend the game. But Tony always kept his person that might be mad at them, but he'd be able to win them back over, and then he'd be able to work his way from there. And I felt like this is the key error in Ricard's game. I'd love to hear more from Ricard about like the decision and why it was Shan versus somebody else, if he felt like it needed to be Shan or whatever. But I do feel like this is the mistake. But still, very good overall from Ricard. I mean, he came in with the disadvantage of, again, not having a great starting position, he needed to work for everything that he got when it came to strategic position. So very impressed overall. What do you think about the Shan move, Aysha?
So it did help in his interview for him to say that Shan had said, like, okay, we're not going to go, like, this is not the time. At 7, we can go after each other. And so I think had this been a longer season or a typical 39-day season, he would have been able to not instantly react and say, oh, then it has to be Shan. He would be able to say, well, maybe it is in my best interest to keep Shan because, like you said, she would be a shield in front of me. But I think, with 26 days, a lot of the moves we saw were on gut instinct, and they just had to go for it the moment that they thought of it, because it was just like, well, tribals tonight, we got to get this going. So I don't think that it was, I don't think it was a bad move, but I do think, like you said, it should have been Danny or Deshawn or even Liana. I think Liana probably would have been a smart move in that situation because she was Shan's person. She, if he had to get one person and he was able to get the votes, I think Liana would have been, should have been the target, because then he still has Shan. Yes, she may be upset, but maybe she doesn't know that he spearheaded that vote, or he can explain it to her because they had such a strong understanding of each other's game. If he's able to articulate, I needed you to see me as your number one.
We know that she was accepting of it when it was her. So, exactly. I can only imagine like when they said like, oh, we'll go after each other at 7, like that's Shan coming from a position of power, right?
Yeah.
If Ricard is in a position of power at 7 and he's like, I will hold out my hand to you right now, don't come after me. He's her only connection at that point. Erica and Heather one are gone. Like she doesn't really have another option unless she wants to spite herself to get at him. So yeah, I just feel like that's the play. But you know, sometimes you just feel like you got to go for it. But I do feel like that was the move.
Yeah, it sucks too because it just felt like, yeah, once Shan was gone, his back was against the wall and he was just like fighting for his life until the moment that he left, because it was just like, okay, unless these people are wanting to actively lose to you, they're going to get you out at this point, which is the perspective that Deshawn had, because he couldn't figure out why they wouldn't vote him out. Deshawn was like, this guy is going to win. So I think like Ricard, he was too good comparatively. I mean, you had a lot of people who hadn't experienced as much as him and Shan did early in the game, with going to tribal back to back to back, having to strategize, having to play the game when everyone else was, surviving, but not having to be as strategic because they weren't having to vote people out. So yeah, I mean, I think only thing that could have helped Ricard was to get an idol himself early on, to be able to hold on to, because then at least he had some leverage. He didn't have to depend on Shan's advantages or even Xander, because I think he truly thought Xander was about to use it on him. So, yeah.
Well, so I ultimately I gave him an 8 overall. I think that I almost gave him a 7 just because I really felt like being so surprised that Erica wasn't going to keep him was like,
Yeah.
this is a hole in your armor here. But overall, I was very impressed with his game, and I think the fact that he seemingly got so close to getting Xander to make a play that was just completely wildly bad for him. Speaks to Ricard's game, and very clearly would have won if he had made it there, and he did come very close. So an 8 overall for me.
Yeah, I think if I had been leaning a 9, but I think that the only way I would be able to do a 9 is if he was able to effectively convince Xander to use that, because Xander had the logic there of, maybe I could just get Ricard out with the fire making challenge. Or like if we get there and then he's a shield and no one's looking at me, like I think Xander would have carried that through all the way to the final 3, and then even at final 3, if this person, so because of that, I'm going to give him an 8 as well. I think he played a very strong game. I think you drop him in any season of Survivor, and he's going to do really well. I think that is I'm glad he did develop those relationships, but I would have liked to see him expand his strategic skills a little bit more. Like I feel like he definitely worked it with the Shan vote, but then when it came to himself, it was very hard for him to keep his own safety or to keep his own name out of people's mouths, in order to effectively like shift the target on other people, not just to get him out for that vote, but for the next vote and the next vote. Because I just always felt like he was hanging on by a limb. And he, being so great at challenges really worked in his favor. And so I think he's such a strong Survivor player, and I enjoyed the eulogy they gave him because he did play such a great game. So I'm glad that he was given his flowers while he was there.
Yeah. All right. Next, let's talk about Heather. I was actually like pretty pleased with Heather overall in terms of like her strategic decisions in this episode. I feel like being very willing to go to fire is the move for her. She has nothing to lose, so she might as well just go and make fire. Being dragged to the end, she's basically a guaranteed loss. And if she does have a dramatic win in fire, it at least gives her something. Maybe she can pick up a vote or two and get second place at this point. Overall, though, it's pretty clear that from the beginning, nobody really respected her game, and nobody was ever really going to vote for her in the final tribal, even if she had made it. This is this is her sort of dream scenario in terms of like how well she's going to do overall. I guess the real dream scenario is actually making it to final tribal, but
Right.
I don't feel like she was ever in any danger of getting any votes in the end, which is, I mean, if you talk about a way to very consistently lose the game of Survivor, it's not being able to win jury votes. And
Yeah.
I don't think there was anything specific about this cast that was particularly anti-Heather. I
Yeah.
think she just, for whatever reason, and I'm sure part of it is her age, just, they're just not gonna give it to her. She just doesn't command that respect. She just wasn't involved enough in the game.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for her, that's always going to put her in a position where it's going to be very difficult for her to win. I think my read here, and I could be wrong, and if I am, I apologize, Heather, but my read on it was that she felt similarly. That when
Yeah.
she was voted out, she was kind of like, I went far. This
Yeah.
is great. I did pretty well.
Mhm.
I didn't really expect to win, but I feel like did all right. And again, I feel like that's kind of true. But considering the fact that again, like it's like she's never gonna win, I had to go
Yeah.
with a 2.
Same. We're right there. Because I was like, should I be nice and give Heather a 3? I was like, no. I definitely came in here. It's like Heather is a solid 2. I think the only I enjoyed watching her just in the background, watching her like, oh, there's Heather in a conversation when Tribal goes crazy. But outside of that, it's just that she is a very like supporting character in the season, and it's like to get anything done you should initiate, and not just at the last minute at Tribal. And so I think that she accomplished her goal being there, watching all these years and being able to make it as far as she did. For whatever reason it was, she still made it that far. They could have easily saw her as an easy vote at some point, but no, they decided to not vote her out until she lost at Fire. So she technically was never voted out. So I think, I think she does probably as well in another season. However, she probably would never win. But like Jeff said, some of the greatest players never win. So, you never know. But yeah, no, I think Heather is definitely a 2.
Mm. All right. So after Heather, let's talk about our 3rd place finisher, Xander, who got no votes at final Tribal. And I mean, it's a tough one to examine here. I feel like Xander could be a better player a few years from now. Having learned from this experience, just in general, I talked about age with Heather. I think it's a similar thing with Xander. Players that are older tend to struggle, especially in the end with final votes. They tend to struggle with and it's not that they struggle just getting votes, but part of the reason they struggle getting votes is because they also struggle to connect with people that are so much younger than them, on a level where they're able to gain respect. And that limits their ability in the game. It limits their space to move, and it limits the connections that they have to win votes in the end. So the same is kind of true with younger players, especially on Survivor. Younger players have a much harder time garnering the respect of people that are, upwards of 10 years older than them. Being a 20-year-old, having a jury with, full of, I don't know how old the average age of the jury was, but most of them decently older than Xander. And again, there's a little bit of a barrier there. Life experience is one of the biggest things that can divide your ability to connect with another person, because you change so much as you get older. And so if you're really young, it's going to be more difficult for you to gain that respect. And then there's also just the idea of just there's a bias there as well. You're young.
Right.
I don't respect you. So I think that has something to do with, I think it also impacts, again, sort of, that life experience. It is valuable and it does make you wiser some of the time. And so being able to sort of like have more experience and have more knowledge about these kinds of things can help you in the game. And so I do think that that you can become a better player as you get older, but you still usually have to be in that sweet spot. Xander was not in that sweet spot,
Right.
but I do think that he has some skill in this game. Again, good at challenges, good at finding idols and things. Found a couple of those advantages early on. And I do think his instincts for survival were pretty decent.
Right.
I mean, he should have been out. He should have been out early in that merge, and he managed to squeeze his way through, and that is impressive. But where we really fell short was that social game, being able to genuinely connect with other people and win their respect. He was not able to do that, and he makes some very boneheaded moves
Yeah.
in this episode. So overall, I have him for myself balanced out at around a 5 for Xander. You feel similarly?
I wish I could. I should have sent you my ratings beforehand because this is wild. I am literally exactly a 5 because it's so either way. Like Xander, yeah, like you said, he did great with providing and just those the skills needed to survive, period. But not the game of Survivor. I think that with age, he can do really well. But right now, as 20-year-old Xander, I think he just showed, there were areas of like lack of emotional intelligence, a lack of like social awareness, and being able to just read what was going on, like whether it's the jury reactions or read that, what's going on back at camp. So I think there were just many areas. We saw so many flaws in Xander's game, but he made it. He made it all the way to final 3. It's just that, okay, is that the case if he doesn't have these advantages? Like, is that the case if he doesn't have an idol that everyone knows about, or that he has this extra vote that everyone knows about? I could see it very well, him being up for the vote. And then it's like, okay, then can he work his way out of that? I don't think if he had faced adversity at any point in the season early on, if he didn't have these advantages that people knew about, that he would have been able to work his way out of that situation, or had enough connections for people to save him, to say, oh, no, we can't get rid of Xander because blah, 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 if he was completely vulnerable. So because of that, it's just like very middle of the road, and just see him as a
Mm.
solid 5. And then we have to also take into consideration the fact that he was a 0 vote finalist. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about Deshawn, our second place, our runner-up. Deshawn, again, another interesting one for me. I feel like he showed so much promise, especially in the pre-merge. He had a firm control of his tribe on Luvu. Ultimately, never goes to tribal. I do wonder, like, how this would have played out if they had gone to tribal, if they'd been able to throw
Yeah.
that challenge. Do they ultimately vote out Erica there? Probably. And then what happens from there? Is he in a stronger position? Is he in a weaker position? Does he change his mind and vote out Sydney? Probably not, because he doesn't want to piss off Danny. So that's interesting. And then you also have to wonder, like, if he does not, run into Shan, does he get off kilter in the way that he ultimately does? I think that's something to think about. But ultimately, you have to judge based on what we did see from him, and he did make some blunders along the way. But I also, again, I feel like Deshawn at his best is a lot better than Xander at his best. Deshawn at
Yes.
his worst was sometimes a little worse than Xander at his worst.
Yeah.
But overall, for me, I feel like the potential is there that if like I can see a spot where for Deshawn, like if things are set up well for him and he never gets thrown off kilter, that he could just ride that and just dominate a game. I think he has that potential. You know, I talk a lot about in Big Brother how Derek, who won season 16, just dominated that game. But we always wonder, like, what if something had gone seriously wrong for him?
Mhm.
How would he be able to handle that adversity? We don't really know. And so for me, I feel like Deshawn is in a somewhat similar place. Not saying that he's comparable to Derek, but that I feel like if he had been a little bit luckier, and he did get kind of lucky by the end with the
Yeah.
whole Monty Hall problem thing. But if he had been luckier in terms of like how that merge was set up and how things went down, and he didn't have to face that level of adversity, I do think that he could really run a season um, pretty well. But you're often going to find adversity in
Mhm.
the season that you play, and for that reason, I gave him a 6.
I literally had it on my hands. I was like, if Taran gives him a 6, I just sound like I'm copying your ratings, but honestly, I was like, I have it ready. I have it ready. He is a solid 6 because I think he has the edge over Xander. However, there were so many moments that like and I do feel like he had a grasp on wanting to make moves, wanting to get people together. Like he played a very active role in his own game. However, like Xander, there were multiple flaws in his game, multiple moments of temper tantrums, or just, well, this is the move. Like for example, the time that him and Danny, the votes were going to be him or Danny. It's like, why not think about how you and Danny could vote for 2 other people and then you could tie it and then you're in a different situation rather than just, well, my fate is sealed and that's it. I think there were I do like that he adapted. He when Danny was frustrated with the twist, Deshawn was the one saying, "Look, this is a new season of Survivor. We're going to see stuff we've never seen before." But then he did get so lucky a couple of times, and it's just like, okay, if that hadn't happened, would he have been out? So just because of that, and because making that move to get out Shan when it could have been, or not making the move, but going along with the plan to get out Shan rather than pushing back or deciding on something else. I think that didn't help him. So, maybe he is a higher rating in a different season, but I just have to kind of take a step back and look at how he performed this season. And just because there were the, just, yes, he played an active role, but there were definitely more things he could have done to not be in such a sticky position all the time. I think there was more planning he could have done on his end to be intentional about the moves he was making rather than throwing everything at the wall, seeing what's stuck. So because of that, yeah, I definitely agree on a 6.
All right. Well, let's finally talk about our winner, Erica. Okay. So I think the first thing I want to say, I want to get the flaws out of the way because there are flaws in her winning game, right? The first and maybe the biggest for me is that Luvu tried to throw a challenge to vote her out. And she apparently was in on it because she thought it was going to be Sydney.
Right.
And so she seemingly was on board to throw this challenge. She did contribute to winning the challenge ultimately, so who knows? Maybe she's spoken on this and I haven't seen it. But this is definitely a big knock on her game overall, just because you kind of assume she's probably in a position here where if they had lost any of those challenges, or at least a lot of those challenges, she's in a lot of trouble. She knew this going in. She knew that her early game would be the place where she was most in danger, and so you could definitely say that being on a tribe where she was able to win a lot of immunities was a good thing for her. But at the same time, being on that tribe was also not great for her because it wasn't the best setup in the world.
Yeah.
She's put in a spot where like one of the few people in the game that really saw her as the threat that she was Deshawn, and he happened to be the person in control on her tribe, which was, kind of not great. So that's probably the biggest flaw, but you don't really know for sure what would have happened if they ever had to go to tribal. I mean, that's the biggest thing for these tribes that never go to tribal, is that you always think you know what you're going to do,
Yeah.
but you've never actually had to strategize prior to an immunity or prior to a tribal.
Yeah.
So things could change. You don't really know for sure that she would have been the person voted out once they actually have to get down to the strategizing. But you can probably assume that she's the most likely person to be voted out. Then you have the merge situation where, again, it looked like she was the person that they were going to vote out. For me, I don't really fault her for this at all. I think some people would look at this as a flaw in her winning game. I personally would discount it pretty much entirely because you don't know that she would have been the person that they would have planned to vote out had she been present at the merge and not
Yeah.
been whooped away.
Right.
Um, so for me, this one's kind of a wash, as well as an example of they were all planning to vote for Erica, and then when Erica is vulnerable in the next tribal, nobody's voting for Erica anymore.
Right.
Which is,
Exactly.
again, sort of what I was talking about before. Then two more toward the end here. One is that she does have to, she has to hope that Ricard does not win that Final Five immunity. If that advantage had not been put in there, maybe he wins that, and maybe he wins the game. And this is she beat him, and she
Yes.
found that advantage, and she
Right.
earns that. But she was in a spot where it's like that very easily could have gone wrong.
Yeah.
And then Final Four, again, it doesn't seem like she really put much work into Xander's decision to take her, which was ultimately huge for her to survive that Final Four. She did not seem like she was great at fire. She really should have been. And she may have gone out there at 4 had Xander not been cute with that decision. That's
Yeah.
another sort of, I think, big hole in her game. So those are the flaws that I see when I'm looking at like that Final Five and that Final Four. In my eyes, it's still like, it's still a better spot than Ricard was in, who had to win 3 straight. That's harder to do than hope that Ricard doesn't win 1 and hope to get through fire. It's certainly a better spot than anybody else, considering that she was very, like, there were great odds of getting there and great odds of winning. So I think she was in the best spot going in, but there are still some flaws. But in terms of comparing her to her cast, her tribe, the merge tribe, I do think that she was in the best position and was playing the best. So those are the, what do you think about those flaws? Are there any others that you see?
I think so. Aligning with Heather, not as a flaw, but it didn't. Not that she's playing to the edit, but I think that the fact that her partner in crime was Heather, I think that because someone said somewhere that Heather was saying every vote, her and Erica talked it out in front of the cameras, and that never made the edit. So it's like, okay, if she had decided, okay, Xander's going to be my ride or die, or Deshawn, or not just have a great relationship, but that be the person that she tells everything to, she strategizes with, then it could have played out differently with her edit, at least, and maybe her game would have been a little bit more visible to everyone. But in that, she would have been seen as a bigger threat. I think it helped her in that, like, okay, at least I can have one person that I know I have their undying loyalty. And it just so happens as Heather, who no one sees as a threat. And so then it's like, okay, well, then I'm okay, because that kind of puts me below the radar as well. So that's, yeah. So I guess that point is not really a flaw. That really helped her in this situation. So I can't think of any other flaws.
Related to that, I do think that there's one I forgot, which is that she seems to be genuine about not wanting to go to the end with Heather, thinking that she might lose to her. I don't know if that was as big a misread as it appears to be. There's probably some information about that, but that's definitely a potential flaw in her strategic thinking, at least, which other than that seems to be very solid. Like very few decisions that she made are decisions that I would go, I don't know about that.
Right.
Any flaws in her game, I feel like primarily from things that were mostly outside of her control. which, but she was aware of those things and played to them, knowing
Exactly.
knowing her limitations, knowing the space she had to work in. And so those are the flaws. The things I loved about her game are those things that she, again, knew exactly what was going to happen going in. She said, and when I talked about her in the preseason, when I picked her, I said she wants to be underestimated.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how she played the game, and it's exactly how it played out. There were a couple of people that saw through it, like Deshawn, who said early on in the season, if I don't get rid of her, she's
Mhm.
gonna come up at the end and beat me. And she did.
Yeah.
And so what I really like about this is that she manages to, and this is a lot more difficult than it seems, because I think it's difficult to fully showcase um, what this is, but she walks a line where she is both underestimated and not considered a threat enough to vote her out, not somebody
Right.
that people want to take out of the game, while at the same time being very well respected and getting
Mhm.
lots of votes in the end because they thought she was a great player. That that is the golden ticket. In
Right. Yeah. That's the key.
lots of people could do one of those two things and they lose because of it. Being able to do both is how you win these games. It is the most effective way at winning these games.
Yeah.
You can be Ricard and have everybody know that you're the biggest threat and then just hope that you can get your way there. Or you can be somebody, you can be Heather and be like, nobody would ever waste a vote on me, but I basically have no chance to win in the end.
Yeah.
But to be somebody like Erica, who is in the exact right sweet spot where she is the swing vote for the last like 5 votes on this merged tribe and has basically zero chance of leaving up until the final 4, as well as the fact that she can beat pretty much everybody except for the one guy who's the huge target. As long as he loses one challenge, he's gone, and I'll
Yeah.
basically win the game. That's very impressive, and it's hard to be able to point to exact things that she did in the edit in the show because
Yeah.
this is not something that like you pull a move off and
Mhm.
now people see you in just the right exact way. It's how you present yourself. It's the relationships that you build. It's a culmination of a lot of things. And it's something that you could say like, oh, well, maybe she just got lucky and people happened to see she happened to fit in that exact sweet spot. But and I think that can be a valid criticism of a player, but I don't think that applies to Erica because she came into the game saying this is exactly what she hoped to accomplish. Early in the season, she said specifically, this is exactly what I want to accomplish.
Mhm.
So she knew what she wanted. She knew how she wanted to approach doing it. And she was able to explain it as well after the fact that, hey, I developed individual relationships. I didn't need to be friends with everybody. She knew what she was doing. She was able to describe it. She was able to accomplish it. And to me, that is very, very impressive.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do my rating yet, though, because I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. Yes. I mean, yeah, all those are very solid points. I mean, one thing I start to think about is, which kind of lines up with a tweet that Shannon Gus had. She said, the edit issue is often that when men win, it's a story of why they won. And when women win, it's a story of how a man lost. But to me, this wasn't the story of how a man lost or how Erica won. It's that Shan lost. Her exit was the culmination of the narrative, which I think is very true. I feel like, the edit painted Shan leaving as Ricard's move, which helped elevate, his game. But Erica was very pivotal to making that move happen. The fact that, she had Heather. And so that's 2 votes right there. I think if Erica wanted to do something else, Heather would have been down to do something else. And so I think that she was the leader of that duo that helped bring 2 votes wherever she wanted it to go. And so, I think she did play such a solid game, and it is a tough balance to be someone that's underestimated but also respected. And I just fear that, the type of player that Erica is, if she's at the end with someone like a Shan or a Ricard that she is automatically second, you know, because the flashiness or the in your face type of gameplay can overshadow that. I think that this played out to the perfect scenario where she wasn't with two other people whose gameplay was amazing in your face, and that's why she was able to shine. But then my only dilemma is that, you know, even though she was on the right every time she voted, the 7 times she voted, she was on the right side of the vote. I think the fact that Xander and Deshawn were sitting next to her, it wasn't like her saying 5 weeks ago, I want to be at the end with Deshawn and Xander. It's like it worked out that way. And I know she said she didn't want to take Heather. She still would have won if Heather was there, though. So, you know, like you said, I don't know how genuine that was. So I may be a little bit lower on Erica than you are, but I have to think about it. If Ricard is an 8 and Deshawn is a 6, then I think that Erica is a 7.
All right. Well, for me, Erica is. I think she played the best game on this season. I think
Oh, wow.
she is potentially the best player of the season, and I gave her a 9.
Nice.
Yes. And again, I will say that because every other person on this cast, in my eyes, made from like pretty significant to severely significant errors
Yeah.
in the game. I don't think that Erica made any errors, any strategic errors. I think strategically she was very solid. Socially, clearly she was very solid. And even competitively, she was able to win when she. I hate when people say that, when you needed to.
Yeah.
Able to win some competition, some challenges, which does help a lot. And so for me, I do feel like a player like this is so much more dangerous than they seem. Even when you're able to watch them, you still underestimate them. That's what
Yeah.
happens. And I think she could come back and do well
Yeah.
for that exact reason. And so for me, she reminds me of Lisa Stanger from the New Zealand, I believe, Survivor, who's like who played a fantastic game. She reminds me a lot of Steve Moses from Big Brother, in terms of like just being able to just always make correct decisions, be very self-aware, and work within her limitations.
Yeah.
And these are games that I'm very, very impressed with. And I think that she's very good. And you know, let's not forget, like somebody just mentioned, Modern Manifesto. Splitting the Shan vote was such a great move.
Yeah.
Deshawn and Jimmy had no reason to do it. She was able to, from essentially the bottom, split a vote to ensure that nothing could go wrong and she would leave. Like, she was very well insulated at that point, and from that point forward, never would have left.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there is still a flaw with this style of game. A general flaw, not a specific one, but a general flaw, which is she doesn't have as much control over the game as a Shan or a Deshawn, you know, or whatever other kind of player. Ones that often do, they rule the game with an iron fist, and they have a lot more control, and therefore a lot more capable of keeping themselves safe, and they don't have to rely on external factors as much. Like, hopefully Ricard loses. But that's not the only way to play. And I, you know, even though it's probably the most dominant way to play, not everyone is meant for that kind of play. Like, not everybody can do that. And so I think that you know, so she you know, she probably does lose to those players in the final 3, like Shan, like Ricard. But she's also in a position, and I trust her strategically, to always be making sure that those players don't make it that far. And if she's always able to put herself in a position where she's a swing vote toward the end, which is
Mhm.
I never thought they would be able to get into that position, but clearly was intentionally done. Then she's always going to be in a position to make it very difficult for those players to make it to the end.
Yeah.
Talk about like why Shan lost, why Deshawn lost, all of those things. The reason why they lost, in my eyes, is Erica. Erica is
Yeah.
the reason they lost, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, they made mistakes on their own, but Erica is somebody that, if she had been a more passive sort of like whatever player, she could have easily been swept up in one of those tides, and it would have been a battle between them or who would have screwed up the most or whatever. But Erica was there. She was the definition of what Tony is always petrified of, the hyena that will just come in
Yeah.
like, nah, this is my game now. And I love that for her. So yeah, that for me, it's a 9.
A 9 is solid. Like, if I had sat here and let you convince me of a rating, I would have gone there, but I had to stick with my gut walking up to this podcast. But I will say that, you know, it my only fear, like, I trust that she would be able to make it to the end no matter what season she's dropped into. And I love that now that she has won this season, it's shown other people that you don't have to be a Shan or a Ricard, or a Tony or Sarah or anyone, right? To have this dominant personality in order to do well. As long as you know how to navigate it, you can be great, right? But then, like, I see some people saying, Shan was coming after her. What about that? She was coming after her. Shan was great. Shan analyzed every single person on the island. That's why Shan had to go. That's why Erica saw that Shan had to go. That's why Ricard and Erica saw that Shan had to go. So, I think that she played an amazing game, and I'm so glad that she won. And so, especially the fact that it is a different style of gameplay, and I wonder, even though season 42 is already shot, I wonder, will that affect the type of players that we see moving forward?
Yeah. Well, that's what we have for the final Stockwatch of the season. Thank you all so much for doing this all season long with me. Yeah, I know there wasn't a game that went along with this, but now we have some data to look at how the game could have gone. And hopefully by the time we do this next season, there will be a game that you can play along at home with. You can buy and sell shares of these players as we do it. But that's it for Survivor. If you don't want to lose me, though, if you don't want to leave me, I've got something coming up soon. And I actually did one of these with Asia. It's the return of the Taran show.
Woo! Bung, 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 bung.
If you're too young to remember what the Taran show is, way back in the day, about 4 years ago, I started interviewing Survivor players, Big Brother players, podcasters, and it was a lot of fun. People really liked it, so I'm finally bringing it back. It should be starting up pretty soon. I'm working on a trailer, teaser for it, so you can wait for that to be dropped soon. But it's sometime in the next week or two, I would expect the first episode to come out. And the first one is that the very first Taran show was with Rob Sesternino. So 4 years later, I came back and I talked to Rob again. We got an update on Rob, how things are going with the podcast, with life, with the family and everything. So make sure you check that out when it comes. And again, just thank you for letting me experiment with this weird podcast where we try to rate players based on an edit. I've been very happy with with everyone that has come out to watch this. I still can't believe that so many people are so interested in my silly rambling. So thank you all so much, and thank you, Asia, for starting and ending this journey with me.
Yes, thanks for having me to start and end the season. What a ride. It feels like forever ago that we started out the season. So much has happened. So much of the season has happened, but I enjoyed listening every week. You had some awesome guests. So yeah, thank you so much for doing this for the people. We really enjoy listening to it and I enjoy coming on. So yeah, and then really looking forward to the Taran show.
Yes, it should be a lot of fun. I've already recorded a bunch of them. So I already know that they're all really, really good, really great.
That's
And I'm
awesome.
very excited for all of you to listen. I also just started a new YouTube channel,
Oh.
which is I'm talking about one of my other passions in life, which is fantasy, the fantasy genre, and sci-fi. You just throw it all in. But I released a video talking about the latest episode of The Wheel of Time. The new one is out right now, and I'm going to watch it after this podcast ends. And then I'm going to make another video on this episode. So check that out. I called the channel, and look, I'm terrible at names. We'll see if this sticks. But I called it Taran's Quest. My quest to conquer all of fantasy. So come join me. I'll talk about shows like The Witcher that's coming out soon. I'll talk about the books I'm reading because I read a lot of them and stuff like that. If you go over there and check it out, I'd be very, very appreciative. It's a new venture, and it's you might not know this, but it's very scary. Like I've been doing this for like 7 years, but it's a completely new area, and it's weird.
I just subscribed, so hey, you already
thank
you have a lot of subscribers already, so that's
People have been
exciting.
very, very supportive. I've really appreciated it.
That's awesome.
So check that out. And I will be back for Celebrity Big Brother when that starts up in February. I'll be back for Survivor 42 when that starts up in the spring, I think Jeff said. And then check me out on Twitch as well, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. We just finished up the watch parties for the Survivor episodes, but the Amazing Race is starting up soon, so I'll probably start watching that on Twitch if you want to watch that with me as well. So check all of that out. I'm doing plenty of stuff if you want to continue to hang out with me, and I again appreciate. I can't believe I've left this up this whole time.
it just felt like she was she was in the conversation with us.
Yeah. But thanks so much again. Aysha, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Aysha like Asia, so AYSHA like ASIA. We are on a little hiatus right now with Married at First Sight. The last season ended. The next season starts January 5th, so we will be back very soon to talk about more Married at First Sight. Most recently, I was on the Insecure post-show recap over on Post Show Recaps with Chappelle and Mari. I talked about episode 4 and episode 6 of this last season of Insecure, so definitely go check that out. It's been a great season. And Chappelle, Mari, and LaTanya Starks are just having the best content. I love listening to them. So if y'all watch Insecure, go check it out. And if you haven't, start watching. But other than that, anything new that's coming out, I will tweet about it. So go give me a follow.
All right. Well, as long as Rob holds up his end here, if you follow me on Twitter at Armstrong Taran, I will tweet out whatever cameo Erica has for me.
And nuggets.
I think that's cool, right? Like you're allowed to post cameos. They're
For
a
sure.
private thing. I see them all the time.
I've only done one cameo ever. I got it for one of my best friends for like an influencer from like TikTok, but we just both find this person hilarious. And so I got a cameo. And if my best friend like posted on social media, I'm sure she would have. And I see cameos all the time, but it's fine to post if you do get it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see if Rob is good to his word. We'll also see if I get my Happy Meal. And I guess you can find me on Instagram. I think it's Taran_Armstrong or something. And if I get my my Happy Meal, I'll post a picture of myself eating it on Instagram.
Can't wait.
All right. That's what we've got for you. Thank you once again for joining us. As always, I'm very happy.
I'm so happy I'm here.
Very happy here. I'm very happy that you're here. And that's all we got. Thank you so much. I will see you next season.